In 2007, Soft Circle French Bread, the creators of Melty Blood, released these screenshots of a supposed Fate fighting game they were developing. It was going to be a 10-button fighter with the ability to control both servant and master at the same time. This was nothing more than an April Fool's joke, but I can't lie. The mock screenshots do look cool, and one could argue that Fate is better suited for a fighting game than Tsukihime. But what if I told you that there is a 2D Fate fighting game exactly like Melty Blood? Allow me to introduce you to Fate Sword Dance. Welcome to Weird Fighting Games. Episode 4. Fate Sword Dance. Fate Sword Dance is an independent fighting game developed by Team Rapid Fire. I couldn't find much about them on the internet. Their website is long dead, so I checked the Wayback Machine, and it seems like this game is the most noteworthy thing the team developed. Sword Dance is what you'd call a doujin game, a game made by hobbyists for fun sold at fan conventions. The question is, does Sword Dance do a good job of adapting Fate into a fighting game? Let's find out. Sword Dance has your standard fighting game offerings when it comes to modes: arcade, versus, training, and story mode. The game follows a condensed version of Fate's story, the Holy Grail War, where heroic spirits and their masters battle it out to obtain the legendary Holy Grail. At the end of arcade mode, you fight Gilgamesh as the final boss. If you clear arcade mode with all characters, you unlock Gilgamesh, and if you lose to Gilgamesh, you get taken to the Tiger Dojo, much like when you get a bad ending in Fate Stay Night and have to fight Taiga, who was the last character I was expecting to be playable, but I appreciate the creativity. The voice actors range from really good to just okay. You can really hear the difference when you compare Berserker. The Sword Dance VA does his best, but the original VA is just so much better with those monstrous screams. Still, I can't help but respect the extra lengths the team went to include original voice acting when they could have easily ripped it from the visual novel and called it a day. The sprite work isn't half bad either. Each character looks like they should, and the animations are fluid. The only characters that look spotty are the masters, but they only show up in cutscenes or intros and outros, so it's not the biggest deal. That reminds me, Shinji is one of my favorite characters because he is the perfect representation of what a normal person would be like if they had a servant. Yeah, not everyone would have a power drip, but I think it's more likely than you think. That aside, the character portraits do a decent job imitating Takeuchi's style, but some look a bit off. The stages are what you'd expect from a Fate fighting game, covering all the key locations from the visual novel. When it comes to music, the music is pretty good too, with my favorite track being the one that plays on the church stage. Sword Dance doesn't really have a lot of features, but that's to be expected from a fan game. The most important thing is the gameplay after all. If the gameplay isn't fun, why bother playing? Thankfully, Sword Dance delivers in the gameplay department and then some. Sword Dance is a 5-button fighter with an identical button layout to the Guilty Gear series. Punch, kick, slash, heavy slash, and EX, which is the dust equivalent. You've got your standard special moves, supers, and it wouldn't be a Fate fighting game without noble phantasms. which serve as Sword Dance's ultimate moves that can only be used once a match, once certain conditions are met. Something interesting about Sword Dance you don't see in every other fighting game is that there are no rounds. Simply, when you run out of health, you get downed for a short period, and then you get back up with a little bit of invincibility. It reminds me a lot of Killer Instinct, and honestly, I think I might prefer this style over rounds because this is just so much more believable. But I understand why the round mechanic has been kept around. It's just more balanced. Before picking your character, you're given the choice of two distinct fighting styles: Strong Style and Rush Style. Strong Style does not have access to Gatlings or Guard Cancel, but in return you get higher health and attack power, while also gaining the ability to parry attacks, much like Street Fighter 3. On the other hand, Rush Style can use Gatlings and can Guard Cancel, giving the style higher combo potential, while also being able to store 3 stocks of super meter in contrast to Strong Style, which can only store 1. In practice, I preferred Rush, as the better combos often led to more damage, and Guard Cancel has less risk than going for a parry, but that doesn't mean that Strong Style isn't dangerous in its own right. A couple of stray hits can lead to big damage. Still, I appreciate the choice, and I find it adds some real variety to the game. With the system mechanics out of the way, we can talk about the best part of fighting games: the characters. And Fate Sword Dance does not disappoint, having every servant from the original visual novel except Caster for some reason. Saber plays like a standard rushdown character. She's got some great long-range normals, a dragon punch that covers an absurd amount of space, and Chip's Delta Blade from Guilty Gear? I don't ever remember her using that move before. You know, that would have been really useful in the assassin fight. Archer is a zoning rushdown hybrid, having both long-range projectiles and up-close brawling tools, while being one of 2 characters who have access to an air dash. Also, he has one of the best Noble Phantasms in the game. By inputting quarter circle forward punch, Archer does a taunt, and if done 7 times, he activates his Marble Phantasm, Unlimited Blade Works. While in this mode, he gets insane meter gain and the ability to spam projectiles like no tomorrow. I love this. It really reminds me of something you'd see in a Marvel vs. Capcom game. Berserker is your standard grappler. Slow, no mobility, big buttons, and high damage. He has very little special moves, but the ones that he does pack a real punch, and his grab damage could put Zangief to shame. I'd like to make note of his Noble Phantasm. It gives him unlimited super armor until a certain threshold is met, but if I was making the game, I'd give him a revive mechanic that can trigger up to 12 times each time he's KO'd. Would it be annoying to kill Berserker 12 times? Yes. But would it be lore accurate? Yes. And is it dumb? Yes. But I'm all for it. Assassin is what you'd expect from a sword fighter. He's got long-reaching slashes like Johnny from Guilty Gear, a teleport, Rekka's, and one of the highest damaging supers in the game. Ryder is Sword Dance's zoner, controlling the screen with some of the best buttons in the game. She doesn't have a conventional projectile, but summons a pillar of electricity using her chain to control screen space. If you've ever played KOF 96, it's just like Gonets's tornado move. Yeah, you know the one. Strangely enough, she has Lust Shaker and Bad Moon taken directly from Guilty Gear's Milia Rage, which is an odd choice for a zoner, but hey, Lust Shaker does a ton of damage and like a million hits, so it all works out. Next, we have Lancer. He's pretty basic, having one of the smallest movesets in the game next to Berserker, but he makes up for it with his Lance. Like Ryder, he has some of the best buttons in the game and can deal respectable amounts of damage from far away with his Lance Rush or Rekka series. Unlocked by beating arcade mode with all characters, Gilgamesh is similar to Saber, but has his own spin on things. All of his moves involve using the other character's weapons, and of course, he can summon a barrage of swords. He's the character I had the most fun with because his moveset is just so stylish. Last, but certainly not least, there is Taiga, unlocked by beating her in arcade mode with all characters, including Gilgamesh. Taiga is the most unique character in the game, as her heavy slash button controls Ilya, who can do a number of techniques from the Blanca Ball or the Shoryuken. I guess she's a big fan of Street Fighter. She plays a lot like Nekomech from Melty Blood, which is strange because this character predates that character's inclusion in Actress Again. Who knows? Maybe French Bread took some inspiration. Overall, Sword Dance does a great job taking the servants from Fate and placing them into a 2D fighter. The movesets are mostly faithful, and I like the creativity the developers took when adapting the unique abilities of the servants. Being a fan game, I went in with certain expectations. I didn't expect much, but I have to say, my expectations were thoroughly shattered. The gameplay is very solid. It doesn't feel like a fan game or a Mugen game, which is usually not the case for independently developed fighting games, especially considering this game came out in 2005. The game takes a lot from Guilty Gear, but it doesn't have the same flow as Guilty Gear, and I can't tell if that's intentional or not. It's definitely intentional for it to not feel like Melty Blood. It seems like Team Rapid Fire wanted to go for their own thing, rather than copying French Bread, and they definitely succeeded in that aspect. Although, I can't lie to you guys, I would have been 100% fine if it did play like Melty. Fate Sword Dance is a fan game of high caliber. The passion of the developers can be felt in every attack, and if you're a fan of Melty or fighting games and like Fate, I highly recommend you check it out. That being said, Fate Sword Dance is a weird fighting game. Next time on Type Moon, June, we'll be looking at another interpretation of Fate as a 2D fighting game, but this time we enter into the third dimension. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.